Hey, it's Mike from 424recording.com, and in today's video, it's part one of a two-part series all about recording a song to the Tascam Model 12. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video and series, zZounds. zZounds.com is one of the biggest online music retailers. zZounds has fast and free 1 and 2 day shipping for 95% of the items they stock, a lowest price guarantee, and they deliver top rate customer service. If you're interested in picking up a Tascam Model 12 or any of the gear used in this series, check out the links to zZounds in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Alright, so let's record a song with the Model 12. The first thing we got to do is go to Song. And these are all old ones that I've been messing around with. We're going to hit New. We can rename it here if we want. You can choose your bit depth. I'm going to go with 4824. There's 4416, 4424, 4816, and 4824. I'm just going to max it out. Why not? We hit this for name. And here, this is how you rename it. I'm going to rename it really quickly. So you just scroll over and choose which one you want. I'm just going to leave it as Holland 001. That's fine. We'll know what it is. Hit OK. Choose your audio quality. Boom, we got a new song. All right, so our new song's created. And let's go to exit. Home. So now we're back on this screen. So here's the record screen for the song. Holland 001, that's how we know it's the one we just created. 4824. And we're going to choose this button for the meters. So this is going to be, you can change it from live input, PC return, which we're not going to use right now, MTR return, multi-track recording return. We'll get into that when we're mixing. So I'm going to leave it on live input because we're going to be recording the Digitakt. So in order to hear everything through the main fader, we got to make sure all these buttons are main. I was messing around with some of these EQ settings for different tracks, but the Digitakt is a stereo drum machine. It's an 8-voice digital drum computer and sampler. I basically use it as a drum machine. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. You can create your own sounds, sample your own sounds. I basically have a song laid out on this in terms of the drums, just simple drum machine stuff. When we want to record something, we have to have the mode switches on live to the left. It's very similar if you've ever used the 4-track 424, and I think you'll see as we go along what I mean. So on the Digitakt, really quick, I have the kick here, snare, and the hi-hat. If you can see right here, the kick and the snare are panned to the left, and the hi-hat is panned to the right. The reason I'm doing that is so that when I record this into here, they will be on separate tracks. One will just be the kick drum and snare, and 2 will just be the hi-hat. And then we're going to do that for mixing later. So right now, I'm just going to make sure the levels are at this line is negative 12 decibels. So it's a good guide for having a hot enough signal. You could go above this, but we're going to be adding other tracks too. So I want to make sure there's enough headroom. Let's just play what I got here. So we can see up here that the signal light is coming on. That means it's a good signal. I'm going to make sure that it's basically hitting at 12. Now the hi-hat is very loud right now, but it's mostly to get a hot enough signal into the recorder. Later, we're going to bring it back down. I just want to make sure that I'm getting a hot enough level when it's recording. And you can see here, they're both hitting at that negative 12 guideline. From this live input screen, we can hit menu to go back to here. Now to record, what we want to do is just whatever tracks you want to record, you just arm them with the record button. You can just hit record, unlike the old 4-track, you had to hit both of them. Here you can just hit record. And that light turns on, and now we're recording. And we'll press play here. And now we're recording. When you want to stop recording, just hit stop. I'll hit stop on the drum machine first. We're going to stop recording, so we hit stop. We have the Play button is now still paused at 21 seconds. So if we hit play again, we can go on after that point. But I'm going to hit stop again, which will bring us back to 0. Let's turn these off for now. So when we want to listen back to the tracks, we need to switch these from live, which we just had them on, over to MTR. It's very similar to the 4-track where you have the input and then the tape function. So MTR is multi-track recording, and that's essentially the same thing as the tape function on the 4-track. So we go from live, and when we want to hear back to what we just recorded, we go to MTR. Now I'm going to change the meter to MTR return. So originally we had it on, I had just changed this. Originally we had it on live input, and I just changed it to MTR return. And you can see here that these tracks 1 and 2 now are darkened, which means that we have something recorded to them. There's actually a new feature that just came out with these that I upgraded the firmware to, and it includes this menu item called Vamp, which is basically when you're repeating something as a loop to practice it. So let's set a Vamp in and out really quick so we can look at some of the mixing. What we got to do is press play and determine where this is going to come in. And we press this button to... It's going to be a little bit off. But now you can see that the Vamp is being created with this bracket down here. So might be a little bit off. I tried to make the out point so that it will be... It's good enough, I would say. Now this is vamping or looping, so let's bring this down. And one reason that I recorded this to stereo was because I want to have this hi-hat on the right. And when we hit mute, so these are the mute buttons. When you mute this, you can hear that it's only on that right, only on channel 2. And so then the kick and the snare, like we were saying, the way that it's panned on the Digitakt has allowed us now to record them to separate tracks. Because I wanted to adjust, I wanted more control over the mix of these two instruments. So whenever you hit stop again, it pauses it. So if you want to just go back to the beginning, you can hit stop again. I'm going to exit this part, and now it's going to be on the Vamp menu screen. I'm going to hit clear all. Do you want to clear them? Yeah, so that's basically getting rid of the Vamp. If we go back, now you can see that the Vamp is gone, where we had set those in and out points. So I'm going to hit Vamp off. So now right here, there was a menu item that said Vamp Edit or V-Edit, and this mark changed to, I think it said Vamp, and then here and here it said in and out. Now the Vamp function is off, and we have our first 2 tracks recorded. I just recorded the Digitakt, and I have a couple different patterns on here. The way this works is that you can have, I think, 16 different patterns, even more so. I think you can have multiple banks, but essentially if you hit this pattern button, each one of these is a different measure of the song, or it's a different, pattern 1 is the verse, Pattern 2 is the chorus, and pattern 3 is like the bridge. So I basically redid the drums. I have about 1 minute and 50 seconds of a song right now. You can see that here. And so I just have the drums on here. We can actually listen back to that really quick. I'm going to turn this down. As the song goes on now, it's going to switch. I went along and played the song in my head as I was doing these drums. And then when it switches on this machine, you do pattern, and then it asks you to select the pattern. So when it comes up, I think here it switches to pattern 2. All right, maybe another measure. One more. Okay, so that's where it switched to pattern 2. So that's how I wound up doing the drums. And then eventually it switches to pattern 3. So let's record some electric guitar. So far we have the kick drum and the snare on 1. We have the hi-hat on 2. And now on 3, I'm going to record some fuzzy guitar chords. I sort of already have this set up. This is about where I would like to record the level. So I'm going to go to meter again, and we're going to look at the live input. Another thing to mention is that when we want to play back to what we've already recorded, again, we need to make sure these are on MTR, which we just did to listen back. But now we can also monitor and play along to these tracks that are all set to MTR. I'll show you what I got. I'm going to actually, so you can hear a little bit of noise from that. That's my Sans amp. It's kind of a noisy pedal, but I love the sound of it. I was messing around with this before, and I think it's going to sound really good with the highs cut a little bit and the low end bumped a little bit. But if you want to hear what it sounds like before doing that, let me play along with the track. That's where I'm going to play, and it's hitting that -12 guideline, and I have, everything set up how I want it to sound. It's just going to be a mono track now. We're not doing anything stereo, and so I have the live input, and it'll sound better if we sweeten it a little bit with the EQ. I'll play along with the drums a little bit so you can get an idea of what it's all going to sound like together. And then I'll go ahead and record that and maybe play it back. But that's an example of using the EQ. There's also compression here, which I haven't really messed with too much, especially for this signal. And also the drum samples are already pretty distorted. So along with distortion is just inherent compression of the signal, the waves. I don't think I'm going to mess with that for this recording, but there is a built-in compressor, which is really cool. If we want to just play along with this, as long as it's on live, we don't have to record it yet. We can practice it. So let's run through a quick practice take. We don't really need to monitor the meters, but we can, the MTR multi-track recording, like I said, we have the drums on the 1 and 2. I guess just let's play it. I don't know. I guess I like this screen the best for playing along. I don't know why. Let's give it a shot. All right, so that's a little bit of what I'm going to be recording. I didn't record at that time. I was just practicing it. You can see that we could hear the mix of what's already recorded to the multi-track recorder with these over. This time the guitar is live on the live side. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too, there are these low cut and instrument buttons up here. I'm not going to use the direct instrument button because I'm using a preamp. My light is kind of flickering here. I'm using a preamp, so I think this brings it to line level or like a balanced signal, so that's going to boost the signal if you're going just like a guitar direct into here or a bass direct into here. I don't really need to do that because I'm going through a preamp, but definitely a cool little feature there that you can use. I don't know why I have this pencil here, but it's funny to use as like a pointer. We have our track all figured out. We have some EQ how we like it, and the signal indicator may be picking up some noise, but that wasn't turning red, so that's good. And we had checked on our meter to make sure that it was, you know, not clipping, or it's hitting that sweet spot of -12. Let's give it a shot. We'll go back to here. Everything's ready to go. Let me just hit record and then let's do it. We recorded it. It's now stopped at 148. I'm going to hit stop again to bring it back to 0. I'm going to turn record off. I'm going to move this over to MTR. We've switched from the live input to now the multi-track recorder. So let's switch this over to MTR again. And now we can see, once again, now 3 is darkened. So that means there's something on that track. Again, the dark ones, there's something on it. The not filled in ones are empty. Let's play it back and just mix it a little bit. I have my pedal board set up to record some bass. I just have a EHX POG, polyphonic octave generator, and it basically just makes my guitar sound lower. And then I've also did a little bit of EQing for it. I think it sounds pretty cool. I cut the highs and increased the bass, and then found a frequency in the mid-range that I thought sounded pretty good to cut a little bit. I'm not going to hit the instrument button because I'm using my pedal board. On the live side, I don't need the compression, and the rest of this stuff I'm not using right now. So let's hit record and let's record some bass. That take was a little bit janky and I had to adjust some things. So if you hit undo now, you can see right here, undo is this third one. It's going to say undo last recording. So if you didn't like what you just did, rather than record over it, which is another option, you can just undo it. All right, so now there's no bass on there. I adjusted some of the levels and we're going to go for the bass now. Let's give it a shot. All right, I think we got it. There's a couple little, not necessarily mistakes, but just improvisations. I don't know. We're going to turn record off. We're going to move this over to MTR. We're going to press stop so it goes back to the beginning. And now we're going to listen back and do some mixing. So right there at the end, I kind of like missed the note on the bass, but I think it works. That's one of those things, you know, sometimes you don't play it exactly how you were thinking, but when you roll with it, you roll with it. And sometimes that stuff leads to some really interesting mistakes, but they're not really mistakes. Like, what does Bob Ross say? They're happy accidents. So cool. So we got the first 4 recorded. I think we have a pretty good mix. I guess the next thing we should do is some vocals. I want to thank zZounds for sponsoring this series. And if you're interested in a Tascam Model 12 or any of the gear I use in this series, check out the links in the description below. It's a really easy way to help out the channel at no extra cost to you. I also want to thank Steve, Jody, Andrew, Patty, Will, Matt, Devin, and James, and all my patrons at patreon.com/424recording who support the work I do here at 424 Recording. If you want to support more tutorials like this one, check out my Patreon. I guess that about wraps it up for today. Make sure you check out part 2 of this series, and Godspeed, my friends. Don't forget to make sure you do something you want to do today, all right?